This is Kings fans fired up right now as the fan base is starting to turn on Monte McNair and the lack of moves that have been made to build up the depth out here on this Kings roster. And while I have been encouraged about a couple of things that have been going on, even with the losses of late, even though people are going at Mike Brown as well, I'm happy that Keon Ellis is finally in the starting lineup. I'm happy that the Kings' top guys are finally starting to return to the court. But with all that said, there's some seriously messy stuff going on with the Kings right now, and we're very hopeful that this team is able to turn these things around. So we're going to break down what's going on with the Kings right now, why Kings fans are very much fired up, and what can be changed to really right the ship and adjust course for this season. Because, again, I sound like a broken record, but I feel like there's a ton of talent. I know people are starting to turn on the DeMar DeRozan decision, starting to turn on, different stuff that has been made in terms of the construction of this roster, but still, I think there's a ton of talent on this team, and with some tweaks, with some adjustments, as I've been saying from the jump, through the highs and lows, this can still be an awesome squad, despite, being on a 4-game losing streak and now being 12th in the Western Conference. So lots of stuff to break down in this video, but before we do, folks, again, we are very close to 1,000 subscribers, so make sure if you guys want to stay up to date with everything, the ups and downs, buy low on this Kings team right now, buy low this community, subscribe to the channel so you can stay up to date on everything that's going on with the Sacramento Kings team. But let's dive into it, because again, the harsh truth, the sad truth right now is fans are starting to turn on Monte McNair, and I don't blame people, with those last stretch of games, because after the Minnesota loss, or, the OT thriller game where I was very hopeful the Kings were able to gonna be able to ride that momentum, even with an L, continue that sort of performance, and then pick up some wins, right? They played Utah, they played Atlanta, the Clippers, the Nets, and then obviously the Oklahoma City Thunder yesterday, but 4 of those 5 games, right, were very winnable games, and obviously the Kings, they start to get back to full strength with the Oklahoma City Thunder game, but 4 of these games, right, in Utah, Atlanta, LA, Brooklyn, these are games that are very winnable, and frankly, really could have separated the Kings from, where they are in the pack, because, again, they're 12th in the Western Conference right now, but the teams are still very close together. Despite being 12th, they're only 3 games back of the 5th seed, 3 games back of the 4th seed, right? And then, so it's, 4 games back of 3rd. This is still a season where all hope isn't lost. All stuff isn't, there, but things have to get fixed fast, because out of these games, the Kings lost 4 of them, and yes, the Clippers have been good. Their defense has been phenomenal. The Brooklyn Nets, they just beat the Golden State Warriors. They've been solid, but still, you have to be able to beat these mid-level teams if you're going to be one of those top squads where all Kings fans are hoping this team, with the De'Aaron Fox, with the DeMar DeRozan, with the Sabonis, with a Keegan Murray, with a Malik Monk, with all these guys, where the Kings should be, with the level of talent out there in the roster. And frankly, they're just not able to get these wins. They're not able to, whether it's close, whether it's, just an absolute curb stomp, right? The Kings are just losing games, and people are starting to go at Monte McNair with the roster construction. Because again, we can take a look at what's, what happened in last night's game. Again, Shea went crazy, but DeMar had a pretty efficient night, 13 to 21. Keon Ellis got into the starting lineup, and while he doesn't put up the craziest of stats, he definitely has, an effect out there on the game in terms of, at the highest plus minus, out there for the starters for this Kings team. And, Sabonis, solid game. De'Aaron Fox, he's been on an absolute tear, so even though his efficiency was a bit off last night, you're not going to catch me criticizing or going at De'Aaron Fox by any stretch. But again, even though he knocked down a couple threes, Keegan Murray still 2 of 8, from the 3-point line, 14. He's doing a great job at rebounding, doing different stuff, and the all-around game. But the shooting is still not there. And then, we were hopeful that coming off the bench, Kevin Huerter would be able to have more of an impact, be able to, get his game going a little bit more, but only got 10 minutes of action. Malik Monk obviously was back in the mix as well. 14 points, coming back from injury. He had a few turnovers, but not stressing about anyone's immediate return game from injury. But again, then still scattered minutes from, all these different guys. And I was hopeful, right, with the injuries, guys like whoever it is, Trey Lyles, McLaughlin, someone be able to step up and get back into a rhythm. But again, very limited run, very, not serious minutes out there for any of those guys. So it's a mess. It's a mess. Now, this did come against the Oklahoma City Thunder, which are a very strong team out there in the NBA. So while I'm not I am frustrated, but while I'm not sounding the alarms just because they lost the Oklahoma City Thunder, these games should be closer. But again, the Kings, they need to be in a position where they're able to beat teams like the Hawks, teams like the Clippers, teams like the Nets, all these types of squads, and, be able to make that push out there in the Western Conference. No one wants to see this team be a play-in team. No one wants to see this team be the bottom tier, especially when they have all-star level talent on the squad. So again, these are the games you have to at least be more competitive with. And now the Kings are in a very, very tough spot because the Timberwolves, they've been losing a ton of games as of late as well. So, that's a game you get your revenge, tomorrow night against the T-Wolves, and then you play the Blazers. Hopefully you're able to pick up that W. Even the San Antonio Spurs have eclipsed the Kings in terms of record-wise, right? And they obviously beat the Kings, a couple weeks ago, however long that game was now at this point. But, the Wolves, the Blazers, the Spurs, the Rockets, the Grizzlies, the Spurs, the Jazz, the Lakers, these are all games where it's those middle-of-the-pack NBA teams, in the East and Western Conference. The Kings have to come out, and they need to get some W's because, again, everyone's calling for Monte McNair to definitely make some moves. They're not frustrated. They're not happy with, the depth out here on this team. I think we have enough sample size now to realize, the depth on this team isn't really working out. Hopefully, again, it's a first game. It's going to be adjustment period with Kevin Huerter, but, hopefully, maybe him on the bench can bolster the team, going forward against a team that's not the Oklahoma City Thunder. But again, it's a tough spot for Mike Brown to be put in, and everyone's, putting the hands in the pockets memes. There's highs and lows with Mike Brown over his entire Sacramento Kings tenure. So I don't want to really just completely trash on the guy too much because, again, looking at the roster, looking at the depth on this team, looking at the injury situation, I get the Monte McNair criticism because I've been out here outspoken about the need for depth, since I've been out here on these YouTube videos, right? Like, this needs to be something that's addressed, 3-point shooting and depth out there on the roster. So the fact that Mike Brown, he's trying different things. Finally, Keon Ellis is out there in the starting lineup. It probably could have happened sooner, but again, Huerter has been good for stretches, and you don't want to completely crush his confidence, and it looked like the confidence was crushed, in this game against Oklahoma City Thunder. So again, not really bashing out there on Mike Brown too much, but it is a tough situation, and I'm seeing people sort of throw in the towels. Hey, let's just go young, trade DeMar, trade Fox, and build around Keegan, Keon Ellis, and all these types of guys. I think it's way too early to do something dire, do something as crazy as that, but let this roster, let them play, let them cook, and see what you could do if you bolster the depth a little bit. Now, again, if they continue to lose, especially against the stretch of games, the T-Wolves, the Blazers, if you lose most of these games, you definitely don't give up a first to build up that depth. But it's a catch-22, right? Because if you don't make these changes, then his team really doesn't have a shot with the depth that is out there on this team. But if you do give up, draft capital, if you give up pieces, and then things still aren't fixed, then you're just hurting yourself for the future, which we've seen moves like that happen in the past for Sacramento. So again, I'm a fan of the DeMar acquisition. I'm a fan of the big macro things that the Kings have done as of late, but they just haven't done the necessary little tweaks, the roster construction to really, whether it's developing in-house guys, Keon Ellis is the exception, but developing more in-house guys, or bringing in more players that can be effective around the edges for this team, to complement DeMar, complement Fox, complement Domantas Sabonis. But that's kind of where the Kings are at. Fans are fired up. I'm not ringing the immediate alarm bells, but I do think something, there needs to be changes happening. At least we saw Keon Ellis out there in the starting lineup. Players are returning from injury. We saw this change versus the Thunder. So it's, they come out, they can slap the next few teams. We'll see how it goes. But let us know what you guys think in the comment section down below. You guys best take a star. Subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already. Anyways, I'm signing out. Cheers.